dun 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 dun. Hey everyone, it's me, John, again. Do we finally have a decent Superman-related property to look at? Now, I haven't done an official review on it, but I know I've mentioned it in a couple videos and some people have talked to me about it in the comments. Let me just put it out there. I am not a big fan of Man of Steel, the movie. I love Superman. I love the 80s films. I'll even take, quite honestly, I would watch Superman Part 4. Yes, that one. I would watch that one again and again before I would watch Man of Steel again. There was just nothing for me in particular captivating about that movie, original about that movie. I hated how it was edited. It felt way too long. The story was told out of order for no good reason. It was like this wannabe Quentin Tarantino thing that, you know, when Tarantino does it, it makes sense. When Nolan did it for Memento, it made a lot of sense. But for a movie like Man of Steel, made no sense. I was really, really let down. Of course, the excessive violence at the end, thousands of people being killed, but somehow none of that is shown on the screen. But wait, we're going to address that in Superman versus Batman. I know. All that being said, I'm not a huge fan of that portrayal of Superman. But we now have Supergirl. And I don't know if you recall, but in the 1980s, they also did a Supergirl film, and it essentially had a lot of the same elements as one of the Superman movies. This kind of campy nature, goofy villains. The town actually had its own type of personality that would show through in certain scenes. And that's something that's drastically missing from our current takes on Metropolis and even Gotham, to be honest. It's like the people are there, but none of their character actually shows through. That's something that was really cool about those early Superman movies, was you had this sense of what the people of Gotham were like. There was literally these little mini scenes that would just feature the people of Gotham, or of Metropolis, usually getting into trouble of some kind and then needing to be saved. But it was just like a little character vignette that wove into the overall story. And for some reason, our current filmmakers have completely missed using that tool. All that being said, Supergirl now pops onto the scene. And I gotta say, I've only watched the pilot at this point, but for a television pilot, I felt like this was very strong. For it being related to the Superman mythos, I thought they did it in a great way, and for them showing off what a true superhero is capable of doing in a television show without obviously blowing their budget, I think they did pretty good. Now, admittedly, there are a couple of scenes that look a little hokey. Most of the green screen stuff, or blue screen, I'm not sure what they're using, but either one, most of it looks good. A few scenes looked a little but what was really cool was, I know that when they went to produce Man of Steel, that for some reason Zack Snyder got it in his head that there wasn't enough fighting and Superman needs to be punching people. And admittedly, the Superman Returns movie that came out before Man of Steel was definitely missing an element of action like that. We had him in the 80s. I mean, there was a lot of fighting, especially in Superman 2. But Superman Returns lost that. Man of Steel tried to bring it back and went way overboard with it. Honestly, to the point where I thought the action was just stupid and you were just watching colors splash around on the screen. It really did not move me emotionally in the slightest bit. But Supergirl draws this fun line of actually trying to incorporate her superpowers while she's fighting, and it appears like they're spending a little money while they're doing that. She is flying through the air to punch people. She's just got her powers, so admittedly some of the punches aren't landing. She looks like she's flailing a little bit. And in terms of the overall special effects, I think that kind of mirrors that pattern. Most of them look pretty good. A few of them might flail a little bit and not quite hit their mark, but you could tell that they're reaching for something bigger, and I'm really excited to see this show progress and get to those new heights it's trying to reach. It's tied in nicely with Superman. They kind of have these little side shots, you know, you see him in a shadow, or you just see the back of his cape, or you see his hand. Just these little brief glimpses of Superman in the pilot episode. They have a couple of very cool casting decisions, including Dean Cain being in a very minor role for the pilot. I'm not sure if they'll flesh him out more, but obviously Dean Cain played Superman on Lois and Clark, The Adventures of Superman. And the, what's her name? They actually have the woman that, Helen Slater, the woman that played Supergirl in the 1980s movie, also pops up in this Supergirl pilot in a small role, which I thought was really cool. Outside of connecting it to the Superman mythos and demonstrating the powers and special effects and all that, they've also incorporated this cool story about step siblings. These basically, Kara is living with her stepsister, and there's, I don't want to ruin the pilot for you if you haven't seen it, but there's basically a little rivalry thing that's going on between the two of them. It's pretty well written. They didn't go into it too heavy in the pilot episode, but I do think there's room to explore that more, and it really surprised me that they crafted that type of story into this. They already had plenty to build off of, but to have a real human nature basic story like that in the pilot was really surprising, and I think moments like that give shows like this much better legs to stand on. And that works obviously for The Flash. I think there's a producer, Greg Berlanti. I believe that he also works on The Flash, and he might also work on Arrow. Unfortunately, since Supergirl is on a different network, I don't think we're going to have quite the crossover opportunity that we have between Arrow and The Flash. But you never know these days. That's just a matter of a licensing deal being done between the studios, and possibly some type of crossover like that could happen. I kind of would love it if it did, because I think we now have a very good Supergirl. We have a great Flash going into his second season, and we've got Arrow that's been going on for several seasons. I think it'd be very cool to have all those characters maybe pop up in an episode or some type of crossover event. That being said, other notables, David Harewood, which you might know from the first few seasons of Homeland, pops in on this, kind of playing the same role he usually plays, but he's very likable. It's kind of good to see him pop up in this story in that capacity. And Callista Flockhart is also in this, who you might remember from Ally McBeal. And it's kind of a welcome return for me. There was something, I really liked her when Ally McBeal initially came out, and then for some reason as the seasons went on, I kind of got tired of her, and to the point where I really would have been happy if I didn't see her again. There was just something about her expressions that she kept overusing on Ally McBeal, and it really put me off, and I was just kind of done with her. But she is back in this, and she's playing a very different type of character, and it was kind of refreshing to see her play a character that's so much different and not relying on those same few expressions that she seemed to overuse time and time again. So I think we're also going to hopefully see some more surprises in terms of casting, maybe for other people that were tied into previous other shows, perhaps maybe Smallville. Speaking of which, this show feels like a cousin to Smallville, which is kind of cool. There's even a moment where James Olsen, he goes by James in this show, is talking to Kara about Superman's first moment, and that it was him saving a plane. And for any fans of Smallville, we waited 10 seasons essentially to see Clark finally put on the suit, and the moment that he had was him saving Air Force One while Lois Lane was on it. So is that a direct nod to that moment? Does that moment get echoed in the comic books? I'm not really sure, but it felt like it fit in neatly with what we saw at the end of Smallville, which I really appreciated. Speaking of which, there was also some dialogue kind of cleverly written into this pilot episode about not everyone being comfortable with Superman, which is super cool, like the pun there. It's super cool because that leaves room for the Dawn of Justice film that's coming out, where the main thematic element is people questioning this man that has godlike powers, and are you supposed to like him? Are you supposed to fear him? So I was really surprised. I really dug this pilot. On a scale of 1 to 10, I don't know how much more they could have done good for me personally, so I would say it's a 9 out of 10. I enjoyed it from top to bottom. I think they've set up a great universe where they can have a lot of fun. I'm not going to blow it for you, but they worked in the story mechanic where they can have a bunch of supervillains on a regular basis, and kind of an overarching storyline that I know that they're going to go back to and rely on. They've got their own version of the crystals that Superman used to communicate with his parents. They have something similar to that going on here. And like I said, just the real human story about these sisters, and them being stepsisters in particular, living together, and what that's going to be like. I just see that there are tons of great story opportunities in that relationship, and I'm very, very pleased that they worked it in. So did you check out the Supergirl pilot? Tell me about it in the comments below. I'll be sure to check them out and get back to you. And thank you once again for spending time with me on this Geek and Dorks review. Have a great week.